Alrighty, so it's time to do the Eastern Conference prediction after I did the Western Conference a couple of minutes ago. And as I said in my Western Conference prediction video, if you disagreed in terms of where I put your team, don't take it too personally. This is just my opinion, and you can always let me know in the comments below why did I put your team too high on the standings or too low in the standings. And after all, when I do the video looking back at some of these predictions I made at the end of the regular season, I have a feeling I'm going to get most of these wrong. Though I will say that, at least in recent years, I have gotten the Eastern Conference prediction are much better than what I did with the Western Conference. But with that being said, let us actually start with number 15, because there are 15 teams in the Eastern Conference this season. And the team that's going to finish dead last in the East is the Chicago Fire. So unlike how I said in the Western Conference, where it's kind of tough to pick who's going to finish dead last, because I really don't think there is a team in the Western Conference that I can specifically say that, yeah, they're going to be finished dead last. They're going to bottom out. That is not the case for the East. I will say that the Chicago Fire is probably that team that could bottom out this season. And look, I don't want the Chicago Fire to finish dead last, and I hate the fact that I am predicting them to finish dead last. But when you look at this team, I mean, it just looked like it's gonna be a fire this season. There is question at every single part of this team. They didn't make a lot of signings when it's pretty clear that they need to make improvement, and kind of just running back to the same team that finished near the bottom of the Eastern Conference. So there's really nothing that can tell me the fact that they're gonna finish about the same spot as they were last season, if not worse, because they just sold off one of their biggest pieces in John Durant in that number 9 position, and there's big question about that spot. And then they also don't have Gaga Slonian anymore in this roster. That at times he has single-handedly bailed out this Fire back line at times. So yeah, again, I just think that it is kind of doom and gloom for this Fire team heading into this season. But then again, we'll see whether that is the case. And I would love to be proven wrong in terms of what I said about this team. But coming into this season, it is hard to imagine the Fire can be a team that could be not only competitive, but maybe a team that could bottom out this year. In 14th position, let's say DC United. So, as I mentioned before in the season preview, DC is kind of a boom and bust kind of team, and I'm kind of leaning toward the bust category, because as much as they have made some moves that is clearly all in. I mean, most of the moves that Wayne Rooney has made this offseason are just clearly an all-in kind of push. I don't know exactly, when you look at this roster, you can say the fact that, yeah, they are all in, but is that going to, of course, work out? Now, it could still work out. When you look at this roster, Matthias Klick can be a decent player for them in terms of creative department. Christian Benteke can maybe rediscover his good form that he used to have all the way back to his Aston Villa days. And then the defense can actually be decent this year, although there's a question about that heading into this season too. And Tyler Miller can somehow be like the Tyler Miller during his time with Minnesota United back in 2020 and 2019. But again, there's just so much big question about it, and this is again why I think it's a boom and bust kind of team. If of course everything works out, this team is going to make it to the playoffs. But if even one or two pieces doesn't work out, which it seems like that's the case, I can see them finish near the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and we could see Wayne Rooney potentially no longer be the head coach of this team, because after all, it's only a one-year contract that he is on, and if this doesn't work out, I think Wayne Rooney is not going to return for this team. Now, in 13th position, and I know Inter Miami fans are going to hate me by putting them this low in the standings, considering the fact that, I said some good things about them doing the season preview, and I said that this team has kind of upgraded, especially going forward on the attacking end. I mean, anytime we have the likes of Joseph Martinez, you should be at least be a team that maybe can compete for playoffs. But here's the problem. Who's going to give the ball to Joseph Martinez and Leo Campana? They still don't have that creative player on this team. I mean, I know that obviously they probably would, because we know a certain guy called Lionel Messi could potentially be landing in their future in the summer. But, if that doesn't happen, then who's going to be that guy that's going to give the balls to those players. I mean, some might say it could be Pizarro who is coming back into this roster. I mean, it's hard to believe Rodolfo Pizarro is still with Inter Miami. Like, you thought that after during his time when he was loaned out to Rayados and Liga MX, that was the last time we're gonna see him. But yeah, he's back in this roster, and there's gonna be questions to see whether if he can live up to his expectation. The fact that again he's already started to kind of label as one of the biggest boss and part of this old regime of Inter Miami that have got all the moves wrong heading into this upcoming season. And also, I just realized the camera is a little bit foggy. Actually, let me just do it again here. Actually, let me just adjust it. Let's see if it gets better. If it's not, it's okay. At least you can kind of see it relatively well. Or actually, you know what? Let me try it one more time here. Maybe I can just put the camera like right here and see if that can focus here. Nah, not really. I mean, you can kind of see the wording. I don't know why the camera sometimes fogged up when I write the notes on that. But yeah, again, going back to what I said about Inter Miami, there's that question of that number 10 position. At the back, they have definitely upgraded, but we'll see how much of an upgrade that is. And again, overall with that question, I don't know. I don't know if they're any better than they were last season. And for now, I'm just going to put them in 13th position. Now, at number 10, or not number 10, I'm sorry, number 12, that is. I don't know why I said number 10. We haven't even got to 11 yet. And that, of course, is Toronto FC. So, this is the same thing I said about DC United. It's a team that is kind of boom and bust in some way, where it could be a boom if they can keep their best 11 throughout the entire season and they can all stay healthy, but that's most likely is not going to be the case. I mean, God forbid, hopefully TFC doesn't have another injury-riddled season as we've seen in the past, but let's be honest, a team that doesn't have a lot of depth is never going to go well, and we've seen this happen before with this TFC team where, on paper, it looks very good. It looks like an MLS Cup contenders roster, and then you dig deep down, and that's when there is big question mark of the depth chart that they have. Now, as the season goes along, that can improve, and this is also where I didn't mention it in my Western Conference prediction. One of the reasons why it's so hard to predict the standings is that team can make changes as the season goes along. Heck, they can still make changes as the primary transfer window is not going to close until April. So, yeah, things can definitely change with this team. They can maybe add some pieces throughout, but as of now, it's hard to imagine that, yes, they have a decent roster. Maybe they could go on a good run to begin this season. But what happened when we get into the deeper part of the season, when they have suffered some wear and tear because of the fact that they're kind of forced to play the same starting 11 because they just have no depth whatsoever. Now, in 11 position, and I'm actually going to try to do it one more time here in terms of, see if I can make this. I just don't know why I can't make this. Okay, this actually camera's gone kind of, for whatever reason, refuse to focus here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn off the light here, and then I'm going to try to turn it back on. See if maybe this thing will be focused. Yep, there we go. Much better. Okay, I think it's all just, I need to, of course, turn on and off the lights, and it will make the camera focus on the board. But in terms of the 11th position, let's say it's going to be Nashville. And again, I know there's going to be a lot of Nashville fans who will not be happy of me putting this low putting them this low in the standings. But again, there's that question mark in terms of the attack, and that, with if you just leave out Hani Mukhtar in the conversation, this team has a lot of big question of who exactly is going to score the goals for them. And then at the back, I really think that they definitely regress with the way that losing Dave Rodney to New England is going to hurt, but also with the way that midfield with Dax McCarty and Anomo Godoy getting a year older, and it seems like father time is starting to catch up to them a little bit. Yeah, I just think that for Nashville, this season might be finally the season that they'll hit a regression period where they might actually miss the playoffs. And I didn't even mention the fact that moving back to the Eastern Conference, well, it will be better for their travel, because I know when they were in the Western Conference, travel was just an absolute nightmare for this Nashville team, and yet somehow they still have one of the best road record. And I guess a lot of that has to do with the style that Gary Smith implement, a style that works very well for teams that is on the road. But again, for me, I think this season all that defense is going to continue to regress, and the question mark in terms of no ability to find a true goal scorer besides Hani Mukhtar is going to haunt this team. Now, in 10th position, and for the team that just missed out on the playoffs, I'm going to say it's Atlanta United. And again, for Atlanta, I know there are some Five Stripes fans that think that this is going to be the year where they're going to get back themselves to be a contender in the Eastern Conference, and there could be. I mean, if everything works out where the way that the good thing is that they get some of their key guys back in this team, that back line is starting to shape up pretty well, and then not to mention on the attacking end. I mean, I know they lost Joseph Martinez, but they hope that new Greek striker is going to be the guy that can score at least maybe 10 or 15 goals for this team. I mean, I'm not expecting him to basically put up Joseph Martinez number. I mean, it's hard for anybody to just come in and put up the number that Joseph Martinez has been put in. But again, then there's the question of, can he of course do it? I think getting Derek Etienne, it's a good signing if he can once again improve upon what was already a great season last year for Columbus. Though I will say that he's kind of more of a player that makes bigger impact coming off the bench, in my opinion, than a regular starter. And then of course you also look at in the other winger spot in Luis Araujo, arguably the part of one of many busts that we've seen Atlanta United has made. I mean, he has just not put up the DP kind of caliber performance that he has. Just question whether he's going to do well. And then Thiago Mata, I think after going to the World Cup and winning the World Cup, becoming the first MLS player to do so, or the first MLS active player to do so. That's going to give him a lot of confidence. So the attack, I think, is decent. But then we get to the midfield, and the midfield is where the big question has to be with this team, because right now I think the only good midfield option is Sosa and Ozzy Alonso, and Ozzy Alonso just came back from a torn ACL injury, and he's probably, this could be his final season in his career. And then you look at Sosa, who has also been one of the more disappointing signings and part of a lot of South American import that has come to Atlanta United that just flopped big time. So as a result, I think this team is going to be kind of where they were last season. I mean, I think it's going to improve. They will fight for playoff position, but I think they're just going to miss out in the end. Then we go to the number 9th position, and I'm going to say CF Montreal. And actually, I was about to say CF Montreal in the number 9th position, but yeah, I think Montreal will still make it to the playoffs, but I think there is going to be a big regression to this team, similar to what we saw with New England a couple years when they sold some of their best player, and how they kind of regress to a point where they actually miss out on the playoffs. Now, the good news for Montreal, because of this expanded playoffs, I think they're just going to be good enough to make it into the playoffs. But there is obviously the question, the fact that they are, even though that this main core that they had is kind of still intact. I mean, getting Victor Wanyama back is definitely huge for this team, and also having the same back line as last season is going to be huge. But there's question of, are they going to be sold off in the summer transfer window too? And also, like I said, I think the big elephant of the room for this team is the fact that when they lose those three key guys to Europe in Georgi Mihailovic, Alistair Johnston, and I'm missing one play, Ishmael Kone to Europe. Those are some irreplaceable piece for this team, at least in the short term. I mean, Montreal can always go into their academy that has started to develop as one of the more underrated academy in the league to really replenish their starting 11. But I think in the end, they're going to suffer a bit of a regression, but they'll be good enough to just make it to the playoffs. Then we get to number 8. I'm going to say Charlotte FC. So I think Charlotte, again, I think Charlotte is benefit the fact that they, because of the expanded playoffs, I think they will make it to the playoffs. Like, I was already on point that thinking that Charlotte maybe could get as a 7 seed or even as an 8 seed, but I think in this case they would make it to the playoffs. And again, just like what I said about the Western Conference, playing round. It's gonna be interesting to see Charlotte and Montreal as kind of a playing round in the Eastern Conference playing round if that is the case. But yeah, for Charlotte, no doubt that I think I'm not expecting them to have a very remarkable jump like what we saw with Austin heading from their expansion year heading into the second season. But I do think that this team has improved. I really love what Christian Latanzio has brought to the table last season, but there's that question mark of, well, he done a good job as an interim head coach, but now having it on a permanent role, that could be a little bit of a transition, and see how if he can keep up the good things that he did with the Charlotte team throughout an entire season. But also, we talk about the upgrades that they made, especially finding what they hope is the number 9 in Enzo Copetti and this team. I think this team is going to be good enough to make it to the playoffs. I think this team is ready to make the next jump to be a playoff contender. Now, at number 7, I'm going to say it's going to be the New England Revolution. So, again, for the Revs, I think they should be back in the playoff conversation, and they definitely want to wash away that bad season that they had last year. Not only a heartbreaking way in CCL, but also just in the entire season where they never got going. Now, the reason why I don't rank the Revs as high as I think maybe some people might be is there are still some question on this team, and that the quality of this team definitely has decreased just a little bit. I mean, they did make some addition this offseason. I like the signing of Latif Blessing, and that I think him being with LAFC, you kind of had a sense that during his latter time with LAFC, he just had to make another move so he can show why he's one of the most exciting wingers in this league, and I think he's going to bring that to this Revs team. But obviously there is definitely question in terms of the number 9 position. Again, is it going to be both Gustavo Bo and Veroni starting together? And if that is not going to be the case, then who exactly is going to be? And is either of these guys are going to be proven goal scorer? Carlos Hill, we know what he can do, but there's the question of, can he of course stay healthy at times where he has had some injury issue before. But also, I think that one of the bigger question of this Revs team is that what if they are going to have some of their players sold off in the summer transfer window too? I mean, I have heard reports saying that Kessler might be that next guy that could be moved on for big amount of money. But what about Georgi Petrovic too? A guy that, I think every Revs fans can agree that he is definitely the right replacement for Matt Turner, or maybe even better than what Matt Turner was to this team. But there's a lot of teams that have already kept an eye on how much of a breakout season that he has with the Revs last season, and if he continue to have that one and even challenge for the goalkeeper of the Year award, he could be sold off in the summer or even the winter transfer window. So what I'm saying is that I think in the end they're going to be enough to make it to the playoffs, and that's kind of the thing that they need to do if they want to try to compete for MLS Cup, because as I said, I think the windows is starting to close on this team, and that if they don't really compete once again to playoffs, there could be a time where the window would shut, and that this team will be back to being a mediocre team. Then we go to number 6. Let's say NYCFC. So again, I know NYCFC is going to have a regression of a season because this year is kind of a retool year for them. They're kind of just reshaping the roster a little bit, especially in the back line. But I do think that this team is just too good to not make it to the playoffs, despite going for a retool year. Though I will say that at least in the early part of the offseason, it was looking unlikely that was going to be the case. But because of the fact that at least they have brought back some key pieces. I think the biggest pieces that they brought back that they were very concerned of not bringing for this upcoming season is Santiago Rodriguez, and that going forward on the attack, that attack is still dynamic, and they still have most of the pieces that they have from last season. It's just the defense is going to be a question, the goalkeeping is going to be a question to see whether if Matt Freese can show why he could be the next best thing coming out of the Union Academy. But yeah, I think this is going to be a team that should be good enough to make it to the playoffs. But that's when we get to that point where there's going to be question whether they can compete. Which I don't think for NYCFC fan, I think we can all agree that we're moved past that point where no, that now that they of course have won an MLS Cup, they don't have to worry about the fact that okay, yeah, it's good that we make it to the playoffs, but it's all about what happened when we make it to the playoffs and how far we go, because if we don't go far, then it's gonna be considered a failure of a season. But then coming into number 5, let's say Orlando City is gonna finish in 5th position, and just like what I said about the team that finished 5th in the Western Conference with Austin FC, I know there's gonna be some Orlando City fans who are not gonna be happy that I put them this low in the standings, but again, just like what I said about Austin, I think one of the reasons why I put them a little bit lower is because of the commitment of the CONCACAF Champions League. Though, again, we'll see whether if it's just going to be short term because, yeah, they have probably the most daunting task out of any MLS team have to face against Tigres, a team that has just been an absolute killer for MLS team and just almost like an automatic L. And whenever you're an MLS team and have to go up the almighty that is Tigres in Liga MX. But even then, if they do have a short CCL run, I still think that it will take a while for this team to gel together to form a formidable kind of team, and by then I think when they do form that formidable team, I think this team should be ready to go through a playoff run, and in some way they could maybe even finish a little bit higher than what I put. But again, whenever you basically made a lot of changes in the off season, like what Orlando City has for the reason, I think it's going to take time to get it right. And not to mention with Oscar Pereira, again, knowing the fact that he's not having a lot of success in terms of at least in this last season or two, in terms of really getting the balance of this team right and really getting this team to play that good brand of soccer that we saw when he took over. It will be interesting to see whether if he gets that right and get this team to not only make it to the playoffs, but should be an MLS Cup contender. Now, in 4th position, let's say Columbus. I think Columbus is going to finish 4th. And again, I think this team should have been in the top 4 last season. If it wasn't for the fact that they keep blowing leads in the final 15 minutes of the game, this team easily should have made it to the playoffs and could have had a home playoff game too. And because of the fact that I think this season, with the way that they keep most of their roster, and they finally got rid of probably the biggest reason why they missed the playoffs last season, and Caleb Porter just single-handedly tanked this team with his tactics in the last 15 minutes and bringing a technician magician that is Wilfred Nancy and what he done during his time with Montreal. I think Columbus can definitely be a top four team and can definitely be a team that could quietly be a contender in the Eastern Conference. Now, at number 3, it's going to be the New York Red Bulls. So, as I mentioned, the Red Bulls, I do rate them very high because of the fact that I've said in the season preview, I think this is probably the best Red Bulls team that I've seen since they won the Supporters Shield back in 2018. They have a lot of good talented pieces on this team, but obviously, as it is the case for Red Bulls fans, and I said the same thing earlier about NYCFC fans, is the fact that I don't think any Red Bulls fans would care where they finish in the standings. It's all about what happened when playoff time does come and what kind of heartbreaking or that so metro moment is going to be. But at least for now, I think for the regular season, they're going to do very well, and I think they're going to be a team that's going to finish pretty high in the standings. I mean, they've always been a very good regular season team, so that of course is the case. But like I said, there's always that question: what happened when playoff time comes? Are they going to be that team that once again is going to suffer a that so metro moment, as we have seen pretty much ever since they existed in MLS? But then we go into 2nd place. I'm going to put FC Cincinnati in 2nd. Now, obviously for Cincinnati, I've said it before, where I do think that this team, it's not unrealistic to say that this team has made to a point where they have now catapulted themselves as an Eastern Conference contender and could be that team that knock off the Philadelphia Union in terms of that top spot in the Eastern Conference, because the philosophy that Cincinnati has had is very similar to the Union, and again, not a big surprise considering both their GM and head coach used to come from the Philadelphia Union system. But yeah, this team has a lot of talent on their hand, and with the way that this offseason they did kind of address the back line a little bit, I think this team is ready to compete for MLS Cup. And in some way, you kind of feel like they want to do it now, because knowing the fact that there's question mark about that front three, and how, some part of that front three is going to be sold off in the summer. Brenner obviously is going to be that big name that could be sold off in the summer or even the winter. And to be honest, I think Cincinnati is probably fortunate that Brenner is still there, because I thought for sure that he was going to be sold off this off season after just having an incredible year. But yeah, if there is a year where Cincinnati can finally make that jump to be an MLS Cup contender, I think this is of course going to be the year, and that I do think that they have a legitimate shot to get themselves a revenge after they lost to the Philadelphia Union last season in the playoffs. Which, speaking of the Philadelphia Union, I'm going to put them at number 1. And again, I think the Union is still the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. Now, granted, yes, they do have CCL this season, and that's going to really test the depth of this team. But the Union, I trust the fact that it's going to be similar to what we saw the last time they're in CCL, where they're kind of almost the exception in terms of the problem with MLS team going deep into CCL, which is they never able to recover to make a run in the second half of the season. That team back in 2019 for the Union definitely make a run to finish very well in the standings. And knowing the talent that they, of course, boost, I mean, again, it's hard to bet that the Union cannot finish first place against in the Eastern Conference. And heck, I think they could even go toe-to-toe with the Seattle Sounders for that Supporters' Shield standings. But obviously, I know for a lot of Union fans, it's not about how the regular season is going to be. It's about finishing the job that unfortunately was left undone last season, which is win MLS Cup once and for all. And yeah, I think coming into the season, I think the Union is probably the odds-on favorite to win MLS Cup this year. But we'll see whether or not if that is going to be the case, and we'll see whether if anybody is going to knock off the Union in that top spot, because at least for the last 2 seasons, that doesn't seem like that is the case. The Union has been sitting on top of that standings for the last 2 years. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of my Eastern Conference prediction. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And as always, like I said, if you disagree with where I put some of these teams are in, let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.